Okay, this is our midterm that's due July 7th. I chose the movie A Child Called It. I feel that this is a level 1 child or level 1 family. This movie was about a boy named David who had started being abused by the time he was 4 years old. He was physically and emotionally abused. He was also verbally abused. His mother called him it instead of by his name. He was forced to swallow soap, ammonia, and Clorox. At times, he was even forced to swallow his own vomit. His mother would make him sleep in the basement on just an old army cot with no blankets, no sheets, nothing except to lay on this cot where it was cold. She would also make him wear smelly, dirty clothes to school. He would explain bruises away as he fell down, or if he had cuts, that he did that to himself. But at this time, none of his teachers reported this. He was going to the nurse every morning due to his being ill. But the nurse didn't report it because he explained that he'd done this to himself. His mother would not feed him, and if he was caught getting food, then she punished him. David should have been in protective custody a long time before he was actually put in protective custody. He was abused physically and emotionally for 8 years. I feel that David would need extensive counseling. He would also need the other children in that family, his brothers and sisters, they would need counseling because his mother also had them call David it. Like he was not even part of the family. He wasn't there. He was just an it. The mother was an alcoholic. So I feel she needs some type of rehab. She needs some type of counseling. But in my opinion, I would recommend that her parental rights be terminated. If she'd done this for 8 years, even after rehab, I don't see her having that new motherly feeling toward David. Since to her, he was just an it for all these years. He was not her child. He was an it. But in David's case, I know this was like in the 60s and 70s and there wasn't as many resources. But in this case, someone should have helped him. Someone should have reported this. And there should be a lot of follow-up through his counseling, a lot of follow-up to see if he's adjusting, if he's overcoming what has happened to him. But I do feel that as a social worker, I would not feel comfortable with ever letting this child go back into this situation, back into a home where it was obvious that he wasn't accepted, wasn't wanted there. So his mother's rights should be terminated. As far as the movie that I saw, the father wasn't involved. The father wasn't home during the times of the abuse. Not for sure if he worked out of town or because I never saw a father in there. But I feel that he would probably need counseling also because this was his child and his wife did do this. But other than counseling and ensuring that David never was to be placed back in this home, I think David would succeed. And if you've read the books, there's a series of books. The first one being called A Child Called It. And the second one's A Boy Named Dave. And then there's another one, it's called A Youth, and then A Man Named David. So there's 4 books in that series. They made a movie out of the first one, which was A Child Called It. But this was a true story. This was something that actually really happened. And as a mother myself, I just could not imagine someone doing this to a child. I just could not imagine that a child would be nothing but an it and was not worthy to sit at the table with the other children. I know being a social worker, you can't let your emotions get involved. But in cases like this, it would be hard not to let your emotions get involved, especially if you see a child that has been abused, like David's case for 8 years. It just doesn't seem like your emotions could not be involved somewhere in that. We were always trained when I was a foster parent that to take care of the child, to show the child love, to make sure the child knows that they're safe. But it's so hard at times when being a foster parent myself to let a child go back knowing that that child was going back into a situation. But as far as this movie, I would definitely recommend counseling, years of counseling, until David felt like he was ready to move on with his life. So, thank you.